Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the vortex chamber of my vacuum. I'm your host, Justin.
I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a packed episode for you today. We've got a ton of League of Legends, more than we initially planned on covering. We've got a whole race and the start of the second half of the F1 season. We've got a little Valorant. We've got a lot to talk about. Justin, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, man. I'm excited to get into all of it. Like you said, pretty jam-packed show. Lots of playoffs going on over the weekend, and we are ramping into like the final stretch of a bunch of different like competition series, I guess you could say. So yeah, just a lot to go over. Really excited about it. But before we get into all of that, as per usual, Aaron, let me hear about your week. Give me your rose, thorn, and seed here.
Sounds good. I will start off with my thorn. And so my rose, thorn, and seed are my three B's for this week. And so my B for my thorn is that work has been really busy and it has kind of sucked for the past week or so. It's just been like nonstop things going on. I've had a bunch of move-ins. I've had just constant barrage of guest requests and things like that I've had to kind of assist with, and it's been rough. I never feel like I get enough done by the end of my day. So it's been a tough week. I know it's just going to be a short stretch, and then I'm sure things will like smooth out again, and it'll just go in cycles, but it's been a pretty difficult one.
Well, at least you're not dealing with anyone like George Costanza packing up his own apartment and trying to, say he just moved in.
Yeah, I haven't had to deal with anything quite like that, but it's just lots of little things that require me kind of running all over and looking like a chicken with my head cut off, kind of just back and forth and this way and that way. So, and I think the fact that they're like not difficult things or just time consuming things makes it more frustrating to not get the actual like difficult, like heavier stuff of my work done. But still doing good. It'll get better. I have a good rose because we're going to the beach this weekend, so I get to forget about the stress of work and just relax, enjoy the last weekend here of summer pretty much with the Labor Day weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. And for my third B, my seed, I just got a bike this week, and so Colleen and I are going to be hitting the trail soon and going on some bike rides. I haven't had a bike in like, I don't know, probably like 12 years. So it'll be nice to have and nice to enjoy as the weather cools down.
Yeah, for sure. I know, Pennsylvania is rife with many a hiking trail all over the place, and you could take your mountain bike on that. So that sounds like a great time to spend some, even summer afternoons, and obviously coming into the fall, I bet there'll be some great rides. Looking at all the colors of the changing leaves, things like that, very picturesque.
Oh, absolutely. You gotta enjoy it. That's the nice thing I think about exercising outdoors and like biking, running. I just like the change of scenery, looking at different stuff. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to getting some good use out of it. But those are my three B's and my flavor of the week. But Justin, how has your week been?
It's been pretty good. So my rose here is over the weekend was similar to you looking forward to the beach. My rose this week was having a feeling of being at the beach while, just being home here in my apartment. So Sarah was at away with clients, and I had the apartment cleaned, did some vacuuming, cleaned the kitchen, I hit like all the nooks and crannies, did all the trim. You see the little cobwebs every now and again, a spider scurrying through. So I hit all those, hit like all the little corners and the door stops and whatever, sucking out all the, little weed stems and dog hair and whatever that gets caught in it. And so like totally clean apartment, feeling super good about it. Post shower then, so I'm all clean. And then list is done. All of that cleaning is a bunch of boop 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 things off the list. So like everything's checked off except like it's like 3 or 4 things that don't get touched until the evening where I can't really fill them out until my day is done. And then all my exercises were done, so I was like feeling toned and good, and I had like a little bit of a like just so that after exercise workout
Little
glow.
serotonin boost, yeah.
Yeah, and I plopped down, took one last look at my list, flipped my phone over, and just kind of sat. I had the windows open, breeze coming in. I was like, damn. I had the feeling like after you get home from the beach, you maybe get a little meal, you shower, and then like you're ready to go back out to the boardwalk. You know that feeling?
Yeah, I gotcha.
It was that feeling exactly, and I was just like, damn, life is good. If I ever complain again in my life, I'm doing it wrong. So that was my rose for the week. I was pretty pleased with that. My
Nice.
thorn here is having to temper a little bit of frustrations on, I believe it was Monday night. Me and Sarah began work on a new little project that we're undertaking, and I was trying to get things working in OBS. I was having some struggles, couldn't really troubleshoot it. So I said, you know what? I think I'm going to need to get some help with this. I'm just going to put this down and, come back to it later. I'm not going to let it interrupt what we got going on right now. I'm not going to let it like fuck up my evening, but I do got to get some help with it. We'll worry about it later. And so we turned what could have been, a thorn into just, kind of a non-issue, and we'll worry about it later. So I was pretty pleased with that. And then my seed here for the week comes from F1 qualifying, Mr. Gunter Steiner. Hilarious. So they had him on the radio. They were patched in so they could chat to him. They throw him the question of who the driver lineup is going to be for next year, as we'll talk about later. And he said, I hear this question in my sleep. It keeps me up at night. And he kind of giggled and said, like, we're not really sure at this point, blah, 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 and gave the answer. But just that first thing, it really made me think. It planted an idea in my mind. And I just kind of started thinking about that idea, what keeps me up at night, that kind of thing. And it was just an interesting little seed. And what to him was like an offhanded joke, it gave me a little bit of an insight into maybe some things I hadn't thought about before. So I thought that was really strong and just really funny. So Gunter Steiner with the seed here for the week.
What does keep you up at night?
Did you get your hair cut? What did you do with your hair? That is the question that keeps me up at night. Yeah, there are many instances in my life that I could tell you about that.
Well, I think that comes with the territory though, because you have a system. You get like 2 haircuts a year. It seems like where you get it real short though, and
Sure.
then you let it grow out until it's like so long that you're putting it back under the
Yeah.
what's it called, bandana and everything. You do that,
Yeah.
then you go real short again. You got like a cycle. So at this point, people shouldn't be that shocked.
Exactly. And also, it's not just like a recent thing. It was a point of contention that some individuals would use as like a way to dig under my skin. And so it is like a very unhealthy like little twinge, right? So
Yeah.
that question made me think of some of these moments, and it was just a funny thing. But we can move on from therapy hour here. That's enough of me. The Belgian Grand Prix was quite a shocker. Aaron, what did you think?
It was really kind of crazy at the it like wasn't the most fun Grand Prix to watch in a way for me because the drama and the action just happened so early on in the race. It was like you started already on the uphill climb of the roller coaster to the top, and then the rest of the way was just like a gradual kind of loop around and slow ride because we have what we expect to be a really exciting race through and through. We've got a bunch of drivers taking grid penalties. We have just ridiculous amounts of people starting at the back, so many to the point that it does make sense to basically go all the way through qualifying and go as far as you can go because there's going to be someone that's taken a grid penalty to the back of the grid that you could still end up in front of, and every position counts. So it almost ended up being like a normal qualifying, which is weird when you have I've got to see how many people took. I think it was like 6 people taking grid penalties. Well, 7.
Mm-hmm.
Valtteri had a 25 place grid penalty because of all the different new parts and everything, and still started in 13th because the 7 people behind him were taking an engine penalty that is automatic back at the grid. So didn't even matter that Valtteri had 25 places of grid penalties, more than the entire grid of cars.
Mm-hmm.
So just bizarre in general.
Yeah,
Qualifying. Oh, go
I was just
ahead.
gonna comment. It actually ended up being a pretty good weekend for the like to take on those engine penalties because then in qualifying you didn't have all to play for, but you had a lot to play for still.
Yeah.
Where Max, with a really good qualifying performance, was able to get P14 on the grid, which like really helped him, get to the front by the end of the race. So I think it was a decent weekend to take them while everybody else was as well.
Yeah, I think that's what like Red Bull and Ferrari for Leclerc both looked at. They probably
Mm-hmm.
said, "Oh, all these other teams are taking their engine penalty, so might as well do that because we know we can beat them in qualifying and just go from there."
Yep.
But the craziest part to me about qualifying was Max did 3 hot laps. He did 1 in each qualifying session and just ran through. He like speed ran qualifying. He did the shortest amount of laps you can do to win a qualifying. You do an out lap, you do a hot lap, you do a cool down lap. Boom, done. Did it 3 times and was 7/10 of a second faster, 6.5 tenths of a second faster than Carlos. Like, that is wild. He was on point this weekend from the get go.
Yeah, not just in qualifying, that pace carried over to race day. Like when he got behind in the slipstream with the DRS, it was just over for pretty much anybody he came up to, obviously because he won. But yeah, that was a lot of pace in hand from the Red Bulls this weekend, like you were saying.
Yeah, and Checo, who didn't quite have the qualifying pace as Max, was still able to drive a really solid race, solid P2, but just Max was also, he just looked untouchable. He was kind of on in a league of his own with both the car and his driving. And it does bring up some questions to me about kind of how the rest of the season's going to look because Red Bull did not bring the chassis that I had talked about last week that are
Mm-hmm.
much lighter that should give them 2 to 3 tenths of a second per lap. Didn't bring those this week. So as soon as those come in, you're just adding to their ability to save tire wear, have higher straight line speeds, and things like that. I wouldn't be shocked to see things kind of start to really get out of hand in terms of the drivers and constructors championships. Um, but getting to the actual start of the race, like I said, we had 7 people taking back of the grid penalties. Yuki starting from the pit lane, and then I believe Pierre did as well in the other Alpha Tauri, taking a last minute. I think it was something wrong with one of the electrical systems in his car that they had to swap something out after qualifying. But let's lead me into the race. How that start was just insane with the amount of contact, people going off into the gravel. There are a number of changes to Spa for this season. It really started off hot.
Yeah, well, before we even start about the race start, I do want to mention the pre-show. They had I believe it's Tatiana Calderon. I know her last name is Calderon. I wasn't sure if her first name was Tatiana or Tanya, but they had her on the pre-show with what's her name? I think it's Rosanna. No, I think it's Law. I don't know. The tall female on the show. They had Calderon on the pre-show, and getting a driver's insight from the W series, I thought was actually very interesting. And she was talking about the race very similar to how the teams, like reserve drivers would, or like Piastri when they're on, just super candid and like just really friendly and I think good on the mic. I think which is really interesting because it's tough to be able to explain your sport well, right?
Yeah, I
And
think
that came across like super super good.
I think it's gotten better. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see broadcasting continue to improve just like as we move forward and all, not just in a like talent way, but just knowing like knowledge and things like that, because you have people now who are coming into these positions and these jobs and everything, broadcasting, doing journalism, things like that, who have been able to be vocal, use social media, put their opinion out there, and learn how to like speak in a public way, in that way for just so long because of the internet and because of technology and everything. Things that people way back would never have any idea how to do. They're talking on the radio, or you have to go almost to school for still you probably, there's definitely schooling involved, but you would have to like learn how to do broadcasting, where now people can kind of learn it on their own and grow. So I'm not too shocked that she or like Piastri are pretty well spoken, but I think that that's a cool aspect of having some of these younger drivers on to shows to talk through the different aspects of it.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point where social media has like given a higher baseline knowledge to a lot more people, so there is more of a likelihood that an individual is comfortable like on camera or like with a microphone kind of thing, just because it is so common these days. Yeah, that's a really great point. But yeah, I just say that to say I really enjoy the pre-show. It helps me kind of learn about the race coming up, learn about just like little interesting aspects about F1 and just motorsport in general that you may not get from like the radio broadcast. And often they have different guests, so they, talk to different people and whatever. But this week they had Calderon on the pre-show, and I just thought that was really cool. So I wanted to mention that.
Nice.
But getting into the race start, because like you said, it was pretty touch and go there for a little while. And somebody who I do want to mention, Daniel Ricciardo, overall the race wasn't that well, but he stayed out of trouble like right at the start and gave himself the best shot possible to get into the race because how close it was going into turn one. I think Daniel Ricciardo easily could have got touched, tapped into the wall, and then done because he was coming up the inside. But the main point of contention was the contact between Lewis and Alonso, where Alonso kind of took his line, was as far over as he could be. Lewis kind of closed the door on him, came like turned in on him. They both kind of go off. Lewis took significant damage. He had to stop. And then we had Nicholas Latifi put a tire into the gravel, spin around, and like take Valtteri out, which was like just terrible because Valtteri saw it. He did what he could to try and avoid it. He got taken out though.
Yeah,
And that was all in the first 2 laps.
I watched that. That was still on lap 1, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I
must have misunderstood.
No, I think it was just one of the later turns. I think it was like around turn 10 or something like that. So, because the initial contact between Lewis and Alonso was, I think, like turn 2 or 3. It was early. But my note from when Latifi went off, I just have Latifi needs to go.
That is exactly what I said.
My
and
man.
Your text popped up on the TV. Dude, me and Sarah lost it. Like, both of us said that exact same thing, and then you texted. We were Go ahead.
I saw that, and I was just like, yo. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt last season. That Williams car had its glimpses of decentness a couple times, but for the most part was a pretty rough car, it sounded like, to drive, from both Nick and George saying that. So I gave him a little bit of a break last year, but this year he's taking people out of races. He's just binning it consistently. He doesn't look good enough to be on the grid, in my opinion, at this point. After the number of years that he's been driving now in F1, I think this is his 3rd year in F1, 3rd or 4th, and he still just has not progressed, in my opinion, enough at least to not go. So I think that Williams seat has someone else's name on it for next season.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. You don't want to be in a position where you're taking out drivers and not even like in contention to be like winning yourself or even getting points. You're just kind of being dangerous at the back of the pack. And obviously there was a lot going on. There were a lot of cars around him, but he was the one that spun, and really unfortunate. I agree. Get him out of here. That was a really funny moment. Just glad that Valtteri was safe and everybody was okay.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. Tough one.
Yeah, and spinning right across the track and everything, like he very easily, timing being different, could have hit Valtteri not on the back tire and more to the side, and so I'm definitely glad everyone's safe and all, but that was concerning. Watching the replay of the Lewis and Alonso incident, though, that's when I really, because they didn't really show it very well the first time around. When they brought the replay on, I was like, oh, Lewis turned in on him. And I had a almost similar reaction as Alonso initially, and not as harsh, but I was like, this isn't the first time that Lewis has like done that. He has a lot of trouble. And other drivers do too, of course, which is why this happens so frequently. But when people try to pass him on, like, or someone's trying to pass him on the outside, or he is trying to pass someone on the outside, he just kind of loses a sense of spatial awareness and all. And I'm not saying any of it's intentional, but I mean, he took out Alex Albon twice in back-to-back races, like last race of the season in one year and the first race the next year or something like that, or very close together in similar instances. And so I saw a lot of people going pretty hard at Alonso online for being so kind of matter of fact about the way he said it. But also, like, these guys are heated. They're in the cars. You and I have watched a bit more IndyCar this year than we had previously, I think. And those radio messages when there's collisions and stuff, they're like, and they're like, he's trying to run me off the road. And like, you're still not that aggressive in F1. It's more just like, what does this guy think he's doing?
Right.
So
I thought it was interesting when asked about it afterwards. Lewis was like, "Yeah, I don't want to hear what he said. That's fine."
Well,
I respect that.
I do too.
Where it seems to be a little bit understood that everybody talks shit on everybody in moments like that. So, like, I don't want to hear the specifics. I get it. I made a mistake. I pissed him off. That's fine.
Yeah, and I think it was also the fact that he had already, like, previously in earlier interviews, right after he had finished, been like, yeah, I, like, messed up. He was in my blind spot. Like, while the race is still going and he got back to the paddock after his long walk, they interviewed him, and that's what he said. So I think at the end of the race, hearing that and he was probably just like, I already said my bad. I know, like, my mistake, so I don't care what he says because that doesn't make me drive better. Me learning from this makes me drive better. So yeah, I like totally respect him just kind of blowing off the question. But that was just as the race continued. I immediately after all of these replays, I looked at the race order and I'm just like, how is Max in P8? Because
yeah, he made like 5 overtakes like right at the start. He had an amazing start.
It was ridiculous. I was just watching through and I'm like, how is he just flying through the pack this fast? He went from 14th to 8th by the second lap.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. He was up to 4th by the 7th lap of the race. Like, he was just cruising through places. They, on the broadcast, they're like, oh, he needs to, like, pass a guy a lap. And he's just like, okay. And just goes and does it.
Well, the DRS was so strong. It was so strong. Like, especially combined with the Red Bull straight line speed. They've been talking about it all year. The slipstream tucking right in behind a driver. The straight after Eau Rouge and Radeon, it's super fucking long. So you can just tuck in and you have the choice. You go inside or outside, and it was super consistent throughout the whole day. The one thing I wanted to comment on about those turns, I don't know if you noticed, but they pulled that wall all the way back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, they made a lot of changes to the track for safety and things like that, which I love.
I thought that was super dope. There's just like big runoff space. There's gravel where that turn is now just fast. It's not dangerous too because there's just a fucking corner at the top of it. And like, it's insane to think about it before where you look at it now. It's like, oh, that makes so much more sense.
Oh, yeah.
And previously, we're all like, wow, what an exciting track. It's like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, the grandstands look amazing. All the new safety features were great. I think they helped immensely. So yeah, I was very pleased about all that. And I think it's indicative of the sport pushing to, safer stuff, which is dope.
Yeah.
Made for a great race.
Absolutely. I think the thing that I'm interested in seeing is the difference between this and Monza, because both are very fast tracks with lots of straights. But I think that just like from the physics of it at Spa, I think that how you're saying the slipstream, the DRS and everything, I think it adds a lot more. I believe I remember them saying on the broadcast that the Red Bull was getting 30 kilometers with the DRS. And I think that's because up the hill of Eau Rouge, because of the changing in elevation, I think the slipstream is easier to get under, technically, because if you're behind, you're also lower down in general.
Oh, so you
So
would be like shooting up.
so you're kind of like a slipstream under that. I think gives you extra speed if I understand the arrow of it at least a little bit.
Sure.
So compared to Monza, where you don't have as great of changes of elevation, even though the Red Bull will have the straight line speed and be like really quick with that, I think that also makes a significant difference between this
Yeah.
and Monza. So it'll be curious to see how the Red Bulls do, and also the Williams, because Alex Albon was getting the highest straight line speed in the Williams at a number of different checkpoints that they had throughout the weekend.
Hmm.
The Williams was flying, which was really impressive to see Alex have a nice race, get back in the points, even though he slowly kind of fell down the grid. He had a lot of pace in the Williams.
Wow, I didn't know his straight line speed was that good. That's quite impressive.
Yeah, he topped out on the I forget what they call it, like the
Speed trap.
speed trap. Yeah, he
Hmm.
was the top person going through the speed trap a couple times on the weekend. I'm pretty sure.
Gotcha.
So
Now, you know who was not at the top of the speed trap tables was either of the Ferrari drivers, forever on the wrong strategy, not getting the tires right, and having like two of the stronger drivers on the grid. We've seen them, and they just can't put it together on the pit wall and figure out the strategy, or they have the strategy figured out, but they're letting audibles and like what other teams are doing interrupt their plan. It feels like, I don't know what it feels like, but
it's just like it's Murphy's Law. It's anything bad that can happen will, and it's both in strategy and in luck. I mean, fucking Max's tear off from his visor ended up in Leclerc's brake duct, which caused his brakes to overheat, which fried a sensor in his car, which made it so his pit limiter didn't properly sense how fast he was going. So he went 1 kilometer an hour over the pit lane speed and gets the 5 second penalty. And that's from Max's tear off, going in his brake duct, overheating the brake, and then frying a sensor. Like, that is just about as bad luck as you can have it. And then you add Ferrari having garbage strategy in. They're like, oh yeah, you lose 19 seconds on a pit stop, and Alonso is 19.2 behind. Yeah, let's pit instead of just guaranteeing ourselves this position and not going for fastest lap.
yeah, I thought that was crazy. I didn't really understand that. Um, yeah, especially after having such a tough race to begin with. Like, why wouldn't you just want the position? Why would you just want 1 point more? It
Yeah.
felt a little greedy from a team that like had already made a couple of mistakes.
Yeah, and instead of getting that 1 point more and getting 11 points on the day, you get 8. So you lose out again with Alonso getting past. And so, I mean, obviously, the tire sensor and everything, they're the sensor that was overheated and wore out because of the brake duct overheating, was just terrible luck. But I didn't see a need to go for the fastest lap there. It wasn't a big enough gap. The Alpine has pace, and it has through the season. You're expecting Leclerc to go out on cold tires and tuck in behind Alonso, pass him. Like, the idea of passing someone and getting fastest lap doesn't usually coincide because people are playing defensive and driving certain ways that typically slow you down.
Right.
So why put yourself in a tight battle with Alonso when you're trying to go for fastest lap? And I mean, earlier in the race, they're asking Leclerc what that I was dying laughing at the radio messages for Leclerc. Because for like 5 laps in a row, broadcast is going, and then it's just like Leclerc radio message. I'm like, oh, okay, what's this? And they're like, how does the tire feel? Question? Like, hop off my, he's like, it feels good. Do you want to go for hard tires or medium tires? Question? It's like, well, you guys are the strategists. Like, I know you're bad at your job, but based on this season, but just asking this guy who's in the middle of a race, trying to, like, keep on the lines, remember what turns next, do everything to this precision. You're asking him to go through and, like, think about, well, this person's been on the hard tire for this many laps, and so it seems like it's got pretty good pace. It's like, no, he doesn't have any of that information. You guys tell him the strategy, and then he can ask you questions back, like, oh, you're saying you want me to go on hard tires? How have other drivers been doing on the hard tires? And then you can tell him and make a decision. But just being like, oh, which one do you want of these two things that, like, you haven't driven on? Which one works? And he's like, the mediums are fine. Like, I'll just keep going for a little bit. It was bizarre. And so seeing them do that during the race, and then at the end, they're like, yep, we want you to pit. And he's like, all right, your guys' call. Loses out of place on it. That's just brutal for Charles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not the first time that we've seen it. So I think well, let me say this. We start having the conversation about, okay, so maybe Ferrari's not in contention this year, you know, are there ways that, you know, they have a couple of good drivers, they have a good car, obviously. There were some reliability issues in the front half of the season, but if they, let's say, shore up some of those reliability issues, they just have to work on the tire strategy and getting that stuff right, which may be down to like data gathering on a Friday and a Saturday, where are the runs that they're doing the proper, you know, are they exploring the proper setups for their cars, and then, you know, getting maybe lost in the data and then not having a good strategy come Sunday. So I think it's going to start looking really grim for Ferrari if these mistakes keep happening, where we're just going to, you know, at Singapore, we're just going to be talking about like, well, yeah, Max has both the champions in hand now, and we're just watching people drive around a track.
Well, I mean, that's basically where I feel like we're at already. I mean, there's a 98-point gap to Charles, who's now in third place. Checo's past him.
Yep. There
is a 138-point difference or 118-point difference in the constructors' standings. And so this is like one of the bigger gaps that we've seen in the past couple of years, at least, since Mercedes just like was smoking everyone and had Valtteri won too. So it at this point seems like something catastrophic would have to happen to Red Bull for this to even be close. I think at this point Ferrari has to really worry about their fight with the Mercedes and hope that they can do something, because I think my biggest concern is, once again, Mattia Binotto, he decided this time he wasn't going to do an interview with Sky Sports Italia, because he felt like the car was just not good on any compound, and was upset that they wanted to ask him questions about the poor strategy decisions. And he's like, I'm not even going to talk to you. Our car wasn't good on any compound this weekend. It's like, I don't know, man. You were pretty competitive in quali, at least to some extent, other than to Max. You're still P2 in quali. You beat
that's
Checo.
What their reference point is. You know, that's the only thing they care about. And if they're second, they haven't won, so it's all shit.
Well, but if Max is starting at the back of the grid and Carlos was able to beat Checo in the qualifying, and Ferrari is saying after qualifying, like, oh, in their interviews, they're like, oh, I think we're going to have a bit better race pace than we had one lap pace tomorrow and everything. And then they just get smoked. I do agree the car was not, and like, I'm not by any means at this point trying to say that the Ferrari is as good of a car as the Red Bull, because it's not. Like, it just flat out isn't at this point. We've proven it because the first and second drivers in the standings are both Red Bull drivers. That's just the way the car is. But for him to like not even consider that the strategy is an issue, or not be willing to like throw people under the bus, it's like, you're the team principal, man. All the heat's going to come at you if you're not going to like talk about the failures on the part of the team. Like, you're taking it all on yourself. And at this point, I'm starting to wonder if Mattia is going to be there next year, based on how he is just taking all of this heat and blame almost on himself by just saying, or kind of pushing it at the engineering and being like, yeah, the car's not good enough, and not even talking about their failures in strategy. Like, it's a team effort that they have not been winning. They've still got a good car. They still got great drivers. But the strategy is a glaring weakness, whereas the engineering and other things, you can improve that. Next season, your car could be more competitive if you figure out the better aero and things like that. But right now, one of your biggest things holding you back that you can fix more quickly than developing new parts, developing new chassis, developing better engine upgrades, things like that, is fixing the strategy that is causing you to just bleed points.
Yeah, it's tough to know whether that's like up to the individuals. Is it the data gathering strategies? Is it the data gathering tools? Right? You have to go back and look at all that stuff, because like if the tools that you're using are, not precise in some way, then you're going to be off this amount in your calculations, and then all the way down the line, that's going to lead to, probably 2 to 3 seconds worth of pace off, right?
Yeah.
And so it's tough to know where exactly down the river the problem would lie. But you're right. There are some immediate steps that they could take, and then some like medium to long term steps that they should be looking at to shore up what you've said is a glaring weakness.
Yeah, and what you're saying is extremely like valid in this talk too, because there are so many parts of the data gathering that are important. And for all I know, hey, they're not doing long runs and things like that on the practice sessions on each tire like they probably should, to get an idea of how it's going to wear in certain temperatures and things like that. Have guys on different tires during each of the sessions to allow you to gather more data on those longer runs. Because if you are focusing primarily on setup and, hey, what's going to give us the best aero on this track, and you're using your data gathering to look at that, but not look as much at the tires and figure that part of the strategy out, it could be a potential that they're only looking at a portion of the data to try and optimize that, compared to looking at all of it and trying to piece all of the puzzle together,
Right.
to allow you to kind of have a better whole picture, instead of saying, well, this is going to be the best aero for us, or whatnot. So it's frustrating to see, because I think that they have two really good drivers there on the team, and I am even more at this point. I don't expect them to win every race, but I expect them to be competing, and not for their strategies and whatnot to be holding the driver back. I see two drivers that want to compete, that are very good, and they're just not being given all the tools by their team, which it sucks to see because I want to see them succeed and I want it to be an exciting and like the rest of the season, if it stays like this, is not going to be a very exciting season.
Right. Yeah. They're going to have both the champions in hand pretty soon, just like on points, and then it's just going to be a show.
Yeah, and it's going to be kind of just boring. It'll be like, oh, well, how much will Red Bull win or have their 1-2 ahead of everyone else by for this race? Like, that's not that fun. But that's kind of why I was a little bored with the second half of this race. It just
Sure.
Max gets into P1 at lap 14, I think, something like 12, I think, somewhere in there, and the only time he's out of first place again is when he pits. So
Right.
he climbs from 14th to first, and then is just like running clean and clear the rest of the race. No worries, just chilling out front. And it did also, we ended up with some DRS trains in the middle that kind of slowed down some of the midfield battles from happening as much, which definitely was a bummer. But I think that's just sometimes how those races tend to be if there's not any safety car or anything like that to kind of
Right.
shuffle things up. So
Yeah, and I know traditionally Spa is a race that happens in the wet. There's probably a larger percentage of races where it's rained than when it hasn't. So in the case that a driver is able to get a strong lead, they're just going to start plugging in the laps. Yeah, it was very soon before the Red Bull pit wall was just like, yep, it's just about tire management, Max. Go ahead. And then, shortly after it was all over. But yeah, I think a race where the excitement was up top. There were some fun little battles there in, kind of in the midfield. There was some, in the DRS train, some good, swapping of places back and forth. But yeah, overall, I think a pretty quiet race, being that the drivers were okay and they were just more like mechanical type things rather than, bins.
yeah, definitely. And like you said, there were a couple of moments. Esteban's double pass on
That
the
was so sick.
it was awesome. So cool to see. I'm not the biggest like I don't dislike Esteban. I don't really like him either. He's just kind of like there for me. I don't know why. I just have no like high or low opinion, but I've been pretty impressed with him throughout the season. Which also it's an interesting side of it with Alpine. I saw some reports that Gasly is their kind of target potentially for that second seat. So just the way my brain goes is like, well, Pierre and Ocon have not always gotten along. They've had some beefs from all the way back in karting because they both are French drivers who came up in karting. However, Alpine, French company, would be great to have two French drivers as their lineup who are both solid, successful drivers. So that could be a really cool thing. And also, it could open up. I mean, if the AlphaTauri seat opens up, then that opens the door for a lot more people. Daniel Ricciardo could go back to AlphaTauri, going back to his Toro Rosso years, or you
Start
could
it all
see
over again.
like Mick Schumacher or someone else look to get that drive potentially if that seat with Haas, which I know is still kind of in question, obviously, as you were talking about Gunter earlier. There's that shift I think is unexpected from me, and so it opens up the door for a lot of these like weird shifts and possibilities. So
Well, then let's end our Formula One conversation on this question. Is the Alpine move an upward move for Pierre Gasly or a lateral move?
I'd say upward at this point from this season. I think last season the AlphaTauri was competitive, if not better in a lot of ways than the Alpine. But I think with this new project, the new regulations and everything that has started this year, Alpine definitely has a jump on things. And hey, for all I know, Fernando Alonso may be right. They asked him about his move on in the driver interviews pre-race and all, and he said basically that there are a number of components that he has seen in successful teams over the years, and he sees a lot of those components with the Aston Martin team. So he feels like that gives them the ability to progress. But based on this season, the Alpine's definitely a faster car than the AlphaTauri. So I think it would be a good opportunity for Pierre to take that if it presents itself.
I'm curious if the quality that Alonso sees is a company where it has a father who's willing to eat his son for success. I think that's like the key to it right there.
I mean,
because that little Stroll boy, if he doesn't deliver one day, he's getting the boot. He's getting,
cut out of the well. I think my biggest concern is, does Fernando cut his hair short like Lance has now, or does Lance grow it out and they both have the flow?
I think they both have the flow.
They both have the flow. Faster hair? Is that fast?
Way faster.
Way faster. Yeah, I think Fernando with the long hair definitely is faster Fernando.
Well, we just watched some movie where they go to some island. Brad Pitt's in it. He's got long hair. Like Brad Pitt with long hair is fast as hell.
Oh, 100%.
And that is the type of haircut.
Wait, was that the Ford versus Ferrari, or just another one where he has long hair? Because I think he has long hair in that one. Okay.
Maybe he just, that's his thing. Anyway, moving on. We had a lot of playoff matches to not get through, a lot of playoff matches that we enjoyed. But here on the pod, we're going to have to get through them because we want to talk about them all. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. But obviously, a lot of games.
Yeah.
A lot of Zeri angles. A lot of games.
A lot of games. A lot of Zeri. Let's get into 100 Thieves Team Liquid first. First match of the LCS from this weekend that we watched. So only the two matches really that we caught up with of TL 100 Thieves and C9EG. TL 100 Thieves was a very, very exciting series. Anything that goes to a best of 5 is awesome. But to start it off, 100 Thieves came out hot with the shutout, 13 kills to 0, just absolutely running through Team Liquid and the Zeri Renata bot lane. I did not expect the Lulu and Callista to do that much, but they had a game.
Yeah, and it's surprising, pairing, just from Team Liquid's perspective, it's surprising pairing the Zeri with a Renata when there was no Yuumi priority at all. It wasn't banned. It didn't look like 100 Thieves was looking to grab it. So I'm surprised they didn't go that route. But yeah, 100 Thieves getting the, just getting the 13-0 shutout, pretty fucking sweet. I have to comment, especially on this matchup, I think we have the two best supports in the league going head-to-head. I think we have the two best mid laners in the league going head-to-head, maybe barring JoJo. I think JoJo probably edges it, in my opinion, for Bjergsen, but I truly believe Abadaga is top 3.
I think honestly for my third, it's contentious between Bjergsen and Jensen. I think Jensen might be a smidge better. That might be my bias coming out too. Sure. It's hard to tell.
No, I've got my TSM bias on hard picking Bjergsen.
Because I definitely think that it was a great mid lane matchup, but it's crazy in game 1 and 2, which 100 Thieves won. Abadaga wins both sides of the Silas Ari matchup. He just
Yeah.
wins both and then forces Bjerg to just go pick other random shit for game 3 and 4.
Well,
3,
definitely
4,
not
and 5.
random.
Well,
Obviously, we
no,
know
but
Bjergsen on the Zillion pretty
but
well.
like from the I mean
From the
Silas
little series meta that they had going on,
and Silas
he
and
got the
Ari,
better end.
I'd say Silas and Ari are both like kind of top 2 priority, maybe with the Zir in there as well. And
Sure.
you see Bjergsen playing some kind of one-off picks with the Zillion pocket pick and then the Swain in game 4. But nonetheless, with those pocket picks and kind of one-offs, he was able to win both of them. He looked phenomenal in games 3 and 4. The Zillion was so huge, being able to give just opportunity, as it always is, to just be able to revive a teammate, reset a fight, or to kind of allow your team to just have one person be the meatball and suck up a lot of abilities and ults before you use it. It's a good pick.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it just gives them a lot of control in the game. So Team Liquid goes down 0-2 in the series against 100 Thieves. The game that they look to win, they do pick the Zillion. They win that game. Going into game 4, they switch it up again pretty completely. 100 Thieves ends up taking like the priority on Vi. Liquid grabs Nocturne as the jungle, which I think was super strong. I really like the long range engage that they had where Swain can set up a slow really early on, just get somebody all locked up for the Nocturne to come in, core JJ on the Nautilus. Basically what I'm saying is I just really like their team comp, did really well. So I thought that was really impressive. And at this point, we have a series, both teams at 2-2. It's been a slugfest the whole time, super competitive on both sides. And up until that point, game 4, quite exciting.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and very back and forth. I think like it after going up 2-0, I expected 100 Thieves to just 3-0 it. They looked really strong in the first 2 games. But the Lucian Nami is I've really liked it because we've seen it in the LPL, we've seen it in the LCK. It looks really strong and has a lot of potential, but it's difficult, I think, into the comp that they were playing into in game 3 there, because you have so much hard engage from the side and CC from the side of Team Liquid. So that definitely, I think, forced or swung the series a little bit with the momentum because of how hard they were able to shut down that matchup. But going into game 5, Abadaga back on the Silas. He had looked really good on it earlier in the series in game 2. I just in general think I liked 100 Thieves team comp better.
Sure. Yeah, I think the team comp was really good, but in my opinion, it was just the closer show the whole game. Like
Yeah.
he was doing disgusting things. The kick on to Han Sama down in the river. I forget what dragon that was, but like that is just highlight reel closer all day. Like that just brings you back to playoffs from spring split where it
Yeah.
was Lee Sin, Viego, like my man popped off in this game. And obviously the scoreline, it doesn't really show it 1-1-10. Not that, you want to see
That's what you
the
want from Leeson, though. That's like a
right.
perfect score
Sure.
line.
Sure, but like a real pop-off scoreline would be like
Oh, yeah.
9-1 and whatever. But yeah, I think Closer just really facilitated. He was just glued to his top laner, glued to his mid laner. He had some like really good answers to Santorin's like presence. Just shut down some of Santorin's plan and really just took over the game. And honestly, I think he just like I think Closer damn near alone wrapped up that series in game 5 for them.
He
He was a monster.
and he looks so good on the Lee Sin, and
Clean. It's so
it's
clean.
so good. The other really solid part, the bot lane, the Senna, the Seraphine, who he previously having been a mid laner, I think is a great pick to have on a mage who's farming in the bot lane. I think that
Yeah.
works out really well. The amount of damage that they were just putting out at the end with the Seraphine and the Senna ults, and it just was so strong. They looked so good, and it made me question kind of some of the picks earlier in those games, the Lucian Nami, and then the Zeri Lulu. The Zeri with, like you said, the Yumi looks really good. The Lulu, it still looks pretty decent, but not quite as good as with the Yumi. And so maybe some different picks there. The Senna is still very strong with the fasting Senna. I think that there are some options there that they could have had earlier, but nonetheless, 100 Thieves closes it up. Closer shuts the door and wraps that series up to take it into the semifinals with the winner of EG and Cloud9. So, getting into that series, I think everyone kind of expected EG to have the upper hand. EG's been better throughout the season, has looked stronger, but C9 came out swinging in that first game. They had a dominant performance, and I think went back to something that I would think of as a much more standard almost draft from a year or two ago, where you have the Camille in the top lane for that side lane pressure. You have the Sejuani jungle, Orianna in the mid lane. Zeri's just a replacement for a Sivir or something else that the Lulu can, the Tristana or something else that the Lulu could buff up. But otherwise, very standard team comp that I feel like most players in general would be comfortable playing on, and I thought that was a nice kind of shift of the meta a little bit that we haven't seen lately. I think that a lot of the matchups that we've seen have changed quite a bit from past years.
Yeah, especially in these like last two patches, we've seen it shift away from the like Gangplank top lane, Viego jungle, something mid lane, and it was like Jinx Aphelios in the bottom lane. You were trading like Braum, Leona, Nautilus, where it's changed now to like Enchantress supports, high prio on Lulu, Yumi, and who is like top tier engage support. I think it's like Nautilus right now.
Yeah.
Um, so you're seeing that shift, but you're right. The team comp that Cloud9 brings pretty standard, something that you wouldn't be surprised to see in any region at any tournament at any time in the year. I think they drafted a pretty evergreen comp and then just slot in whatever hyper carry you want for Berserker. But yeah, he had every single to use the LPL's meme word. Like he had every single Zeri angle just imaginable. He was kiting so well. The speed from Lulu, the shields from Lulu, the shields from Orianna as well. Like it was a protect the AD comp. So I really like that. The other side, Evil Genius is not playing. They're not playing dog shit. Ornn really strong, Azir top tier, Sivir, Yumi insanely strong, right? Putting the Yumi on a Hecarim, ingenious idea.
Oh
That's
yeah.
like that is quintessential inspired right there. You see him looking for so many plays the whole time, but 0-3-1 is not able to get much done. So just I think to your point, just a really solid opening from Cloud9 and a surprise at the start of the series as well. We would have imagined EG takes game one for sure with this just untempered aggression, just fight you at every chance. But it was Cloud9 that came out on top for game one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is kind of what we expect, and it was also a really good draft from EG. It's kind of it's interesting how they both really kind of got strong drafts, but in different ways. And
Hmm.
Cloud9 just played theirs really to perfection in that first game. Game two, I didn't love the Lissandra coming out in the mid lane. It's again, I think kind of a safe pick, and it's difficult for the safe pick to do as much as you need it to do when you have so much coming at you. You have the Wukong, the LeBlanc, the Fiora coming from the side of Cloud9, Sven on the Renata that can throw out the ultimate and just cause some havoc in the middle of fights and whatnot, along with the handshake and the pulls and everything that you get with that kit. You have so much that's just coming at you, and unless Aatrox gets really far ahead, he doesn't do a ton of damage. He can do a lot in team fights, but doesn't necessarily have a ton of damage.
He's got disruption and like drain tanking. He lasts for a while. He can
Yeah.
stick onto your carry, but he's not necessarily gonna like burst it unless he is quite ahead.
Same with Sejuani. Lissandra, you can ult, you can Zonias, so you have some longevity there. Well,
Hmm.
Cloud9's just gonna try and jump on and kill your AD carry every time, because then you get a free Lulu in the Happy Meal. Or Yumi, sorry, not Lulu. A
Hmm.
free Yumi in the Happy Meal as soon as the AD carry dies. You're just like, oh, what's the toy? It's a dead Yumi. So you you end up just
Holy.
with all this aggression from the side of Cloud9, and EG didn't draft enough damage in their comp, in my
Yeah.
opinion, to really be able to fight that back. Or even if Cloud9 utilizes a lot of their damage and everything to be able to counter engage and try to turn those fights, you just don't have enough there for me.
Yeah, it
I
was unfortunate. I think Jojo Pion went for the Everfrost option there on Lissandra.
mm,
I actually think he would have been fine going for a Luden's Echo in this scenario. It would have gave their comp a little more damage. Like, if they wanted the lockdown from Lissandra, like, yeah, that's fine. I just think you have to itemize a little differently. You have enough crowd control in, like, your ultimate already. Like, you don't need another just, like, random stun, because your kit has a lot of lockdown, and then also the Yumi Sedge Aatrox has a lot of disruption as well. So I think going the Everfrost option was a little too defensive, in my opinion, on an already defensive champ, which could have teetered it. Because they did have opportunities in that game, but yeah, it ultimately came down to a Divine Sunder Ezreal not having enough damage.
yeah,
Who'd have thunk?
who would have? And Divine Sunder, or we had Divine Sunderer, we had Frozen Heart. Yeah, where's the damage? Who
Yeah, it's like the
knows?
Ezreal dream of like, oh, I'm just gonna kite them with my Qs all day and just E around and be a nuisance, but
And
like never
everyone
actually
else is
kill
gonna also
anybody.
just like kite them with their things and not do
Yeah,
damage. It's like, oh wait, we can kite with everyone and not do
yeah.
damage. So a tough draft from EG in game two. Game three, I thought they came back pretty well. Always interesting to me, and just as a side note, between the support and the bot laner when they're picking the the Senna comps,
Hmm.
who is going to be on what. And personally, I kind of expect the bot laner to be on the Senna in every case. I think that a support should be able to last hit minions at a professional level, and they're the one that I would want with the CC and doing those things that in this
Right.
case, like the Seraphine is doing. And Danny's on that with Vulcan on the Senna, who I just find that odd whenever that switch happens. And every now and then teams do it, and I'm always
Hmm.
like, why is your support the one playing the positioning and like ranged attacking champion, why is the one who is playing Sona basically not the support? So I mean, in this case, it worked out for EG,
Yeah.
but that always intrigues me to kind of see. And this match was still extremely tight. It very easily could have gone Cloud9's way. I think the Trundle Blabber just wasn't able to get himself tanky enough and going enough to be able to have the longevity in these team fights to kind of turn things around. And that and the Scion just kind of ended up being their downfall in this, but they held on pretty strong for a bit in that, and Jensen was doing everything he could to keep them in that game.
Yeah, looking for some picks, but he ended up not being able to ace out any of the members really, so only being able to get good chunk damage with his W, but never really like take someone out of the fight totally. Got a couple of kills here, but obviously wasn't enough. So Evil Geniuses, they take game 3, and then we go on to game 4, where Cloud9 picks a very speedy draft. I love the Zillion Olaf combo. It's fucking hilarious.
Well, you run in, and then as soon as you just like go crazy, and as soon as you're about to die, you just get Zillion ulted and get to do it again. It's like it's like you get one Olaf running at you at the speed of light, but wait, there's more. You can get 2 Olafs running at the speed of light at you for just the small price of 1 draft. Like, come on. It's a great comp. Fudge on the Sejuani to be able to lock people down as well. And then Berserker, as you've talked about, just being able to kind of run amok and position well and just do so much damage. Really fun draft from Cloud9. On the side of EG, very LPL draft. You've got the Jax in the top lane, something that you don't see too much across other regions. The Wukong, the Ahri. And really, I think what they were going for was just trying to have straight skill matchups. And they had a really cohesive draft that I think could work really well, but they weren't able to just win every lane in that 1v1 scenario, essentially, to kind of put them in the pressure position to control other points of the map. They just lose out hard on dragons throughout the game. Cloud9, even though they don't end up getting the Barons with all the damage and everything they get from the Dragon Soul and the stacking dragons throughout, just kind of boosts them already having a lead in the game, to the point that even with the Barons, Cloud9's not able, or EG's not able to just outlast them.
Yeah, there's something about Cloud9 having comfort on their mid laner and their jungler. Like, that is, they're both such familiar champions for them. Berserker's been playing the Zeri all series. Like, he's so warmed up at this point. I just don't think that EG took anything away from Cloud9. And then, obviously there's champions banned, but Cloud9 had access to all the comfort that they wanted. And in my opinion, I think it came down to Evil Geniuses not really playing the team fights properly. They kept bringing the Jax in. They kept teleporting the Jax, where if he was going the Hullbreaker build, he should have just been staying on a side lane, making somebody come to him. Because there would have been a point in the game where nobody on Cloud9 could touch him. And I would argue, with the build that the game ended at, he would have already been there. He
should have gone with Sterix. Yeah, 100%.
Sure, I just think him increasing his 1v1 potential in that game would have been a better key to victory than just trying to team fight with him every time. It just didn't happen.
And I guess I was going kind of the other way. I would have preferred to see the Sterix on him because they were team fighting with him, as opposed to so like, if you're going to build this way, then split push, get your pressure, get your gold from knocking down knock down the first 2 top turrets, then swap and bot and let him just do that while you're sending 4 people to contest other objectives and basically stall out Cloud9. If you think that you're going to lose those objectives, like, don't TP the Jax in, let him do his thing on the side lane. But if you're going to, give him the Sterix, give him some more survivability to be able to jump in, because in this situation, he was just not able to get in and really get onto any of the targets that he would have liked to. You're not stunning up an Olaf. You're not really going to lock up a Sejuani, but getting on a Zillion or getting on a Zeri or a Renata, that actually could swing a fight, and he's just not able to do that super well because he gets CC'd with bombs and blown up so quickly that it just leaves the rest of the team in a 4v5 anyway without getting the advantage of an inhibitor, side lane turrets, things like that.
Right.
So definitely some...
So fine draft, played it out suboptimally.
Yeah, some things to work out for EG, and I still think that they are such a strong team. They have like a ton of talent. I mean, JoJo is... I forget if he was the MVP for the season. If not, he was in contention for that. This split and everything. Phenomenal player. They couldn't quite get enough going, and their drafts, I honestly feel like in the games that were kind of more contested, Cloud9 just kind of beat them out in draft, and that advantage carried through into the game because Cloud9 played very cleanly. Yeah. But looking into the World Championship, because we now have 2 of the LCS teams qualified with Cloud9, 100 Thieves both being in that final 3 guaranteed now, and top 3 of the summer split for LCS being the way they determine who goes to Worlds. I have to say that because I was looking at every region and all of them basically decide a different way who all goes to Worlds. So top 3 in this playoffs. So 100 Thieves, C9, and then whoever makes it to the semifinals in the losers bracket will be the top 3 going to Worlds guaranteed. Just depends kind of position, who's going to play-ins and whatnot. So we've got TSM and EG in the losers bracket, CLG and Team Liquid in the losers bracket, kind of filtering up to play the loser of Cloud9 100 Thieves.
I think we're in store for some more exciting games. No matter who represents us in North America, they won't go anywhere. So this is all just these are all just show matches. Yep,
it's like being an Eagles fan until a few years ago when they won the World Series or the World Series Super Bowl. My Eagles motto was always "There's always next year." It's the LCS motto. There's always next
Ferrari
year.
Motto.
That's also fair.
There you go.
But yeah, there's always next year when LCS just fizzles out of Worlds. But until then, we've got Hopium, we've got Copium, all of those lovely words that they love on the broadcast that I know you enjoy so much.
Oh, it's just like, yeah, it's bad. But they understand that they're,
they know it's cheesy.
Like 15,
yeah.
know,
They're going for cheesy. They know it. Okay. Moving over to the LEC, this is one of the regions that we only really did focus on one matchup. So Rogue versus Mad Lions, 5-game series. Really good looking series, and honestly I was just happy to see Mad Lions kind of come back from how they did in the spring season. They had a really rough go of it after making it to Worlds, not even making it into playoffs in the spring split for the LEC. Seeing them come back and make some really necessary changes, and I mean to the point that Niski ends up being the LEC MVP, and he was just an absolute stud throughout this series. I enjoyed watching just as a whole, and I love that the EU meta is always has some picks that just differ from other regions. The Talia coming out in multiple games is not something we really see anywhere else. Trimby on the Lux in Game 5, also a standout. And then the Gwen even coming out for Mad Lions in Game 4, when Gwen has really fallen off that top lane radar. They just kind of do their own thing over in the LEC, but I like how they make it work. I mean, Niski on the Talia, he was just putting out stupid damage in Game 1 on it. Even in Game 2, he was really trying to hold Mad Lions in those fights and being able to contest when they had already lost members on that pick, but just couldn't quite get enough done in that Game 2 to kind of shift the tides. But I love the Talia pick. I think it looked really good, and the ultimate can have so many implications and good uses, like we've talked about earlier on in the season.
Yeah, you have so many angles that you can cut off in fights. You can flank really easily. You can, cut off exits. You can do any number of things with the Talia wall, and it seems like Niski is quite seasoned at the champion. Was using it in very many creative ways. What I like most about the Talia pick is how much space she demands in fights. The E stones that she lays out, and then the flick on top, like that is such a disgusting combo because it can scoop up multiple players as well. It's not just like a one-man CC. Her abilities can be devastating in fights, so it's really fun to watch a good Talia. Niski was playing a pretty good game. In the first 2 games, they go 1-1. It was back and forth. Larson has the Ari playing insane. There's a very, very, very high Yuumi priority. We see it in Game 1 on Rogue. We see it in Game 2 on Rogue as well, flipping the 80 carry that they pair with it. So just all sorts of Yuumi in this series.
Yeah, and they played the Yuumi all the way up until Game 3, I believe. And so they had some pretty strong drafts. I think that these are a lot more they have a lot more differentiation than we see in the other regions in a lot of these cases, with swapping out support, swapping out top laners, and kind of varying your draft. I feel like the other regions typically have a pretty straightforward formula for how they're picking these champions and what kind of pick goes in a role based on the top laner, jungler, mid laner. But very back and forth match. Niski on the Sylas as well looked really strong. Having not followed a ton of EU and LEC throughout the season, I was just kind of fanboying a little bit with Niski and how well he was performing. But even in the last game, they're talking about a couple opportunities that he had on the Sylas being kind of their last ditch to be able to pull out a victory as they were slowly falling behind towards the end of the game there. And I think he is a great person to be able to fall back on. He's shown a lot of talent and a lot of kind of veteran leadership over the years. And so even with Rogue pulling out this series and everything to move on, and Mad Lions falling down into the lower bracket in the LEC, I think that there's a really good potential that they end up kind of moving on through and looking at that world's spot for the third world spot.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Mad was playing really well. The series goes to 5 games. Truly, I believe in game 5 at the end, it was a slip up from El Yoya and likely Kaiser as well,
Yeah.
as far as the vision, control, and knowing, you know, understanding like dragon priority basically. I think El Yoya was just a little bit caught out that they had a ward in the brush. They saw him and just pounced.
Oh
And
yeah.
unfortunately, Armit didn't cancel his teleport soon enough, so they
Yeah.
go down like 3 versus 5. Rogue is just able to gain so much tempo on the map. They get put in a position for a solid Baron, and then they're just able to swing it from there.
Yeah.
So I do think it was a little bit of like, they kind of like fumbled the ball.
Well, and that fumble was like huge because
It was game breaking.
Elyoya dying there, especially with Arma TPing in and everything, automatically with Gnar not having to use ult or flash or anything, just gave the opportunity for the Gnar like double jump flash ult on Unforgiven, along with the Lux ultimate and the other damage that they had come out, to just blow up Unforgiven with no shot of doing anything. I don't think he had flash up at the moment, so he just gets like jump flashed on by Gnar and is dead before he can hit another key. So that's a huge turning point that definitely led to the end of that game pretty quickly. But I think the fact that it was just a small slip up and in a very contested and high level of play game, in my opinion, from both sides, that kind of leads me to feel like they have strong chances of making it deeper and kind of winning their way out of that lower bracket that we've seen now. Fnatic move forward in to face Misfits, winner of that matchup facing Mad Lions.
Yep. Yeah, I think Mad Lions played really well, and yeah, they will not be defeated so easily down in the losers bracket. Just one last note on the matchup. Historically, I think it's 4 different times they've matched up against one another. Mad has always gotten the better of Rogue, and this is the first time that Rogue takes it over them. So quite a little bit of I don't want to say rivalry, but there's a little bit of history between these two teams, and Rogue finally takes the day. So I thought that was super exciting as a playoff little storyline going on.
Definitely. I think that Mad Lions has kept them out of international competition a couple of times with those, because in those best of fives as well. So definitely a solid win for Rogue. And looking at the World Championships, they've now qualified. They kind of went from a new org a few years ago now, who was struggling in the LEC, to having kind of really built a solid team, and it seems like organization, to the point that I believe this is their first time qualifying for Worlds, if I'm remembering correctly. So
Yeah, I think as an org it is.
yeah, we've they made Worlds in 2021 and finished in the 9 to 11 range. So
So they were there last year.
they were there last
We're
year.
great at our jobs.
Yep, phenomenal. But definitely a big win for them, and so huge props to Rogue going on to the semifinals versus G2. But I think that's all we've got for the LEC for this week. We'll definitely have more matchups coming up. Moving over into the LCK, though, we just had the finals. We had Gen G, we had T1, kind of a heavyweight matchup expected. I don't think that this shook out the way I expected it to necessarily. What were your thoughts going into this, and after watching, did it meet kind of what you expected, or looking back with the 3-0 from Gen G, do you feel like you kind of saw it coming to some extent?
I think from a fan perspective, I would have hoped for 5 games, but from just like understanding the LCK landscape currently, I wasn't really surprised either. And especially like looking at their bans or their drafts, they are they are picking in game one like the top of the meta. Like in each of the roles, they looked for just some of the strongest champions. In game two, they looked at that for the top half of their board, and then in the bottom side of the board, they were like, "Oh, guess what? That 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 Yumi that everybody is playing, that is just ubiquitous, that is just winning games all over the place. We've got a counter pick for it." And they pair that with an 80 carry that you don't see a whole lot, dominate with that. So not only are they winning a game with like the exact meta comp, they are also winning a game with the exact comp to counter the meta. Obviously, in game two, T1 had Owner on a Jungle Morgana and Faker on like a Renekton, so it wasn't necessarily traditional. But the Zeri Yumi, very high priority. Genji was able to shut that down, and then in game three again, did the same thing.
And it's tough in game two because game two and three, I hate T1's drafts with
they're terrible,
burning passion. Game two, I have no idea what they're doing. You pick I don't know why you're picking Renekton in round one if you don't know what you're gonna do with it. Putting Faker on the Renekton after going through the draft and going, oh, well, we don't want to put Renekton against Aatrox because that's not a good matchup for the Renekton. Like, then don't pick Renekton. If it's that easily counterpicked by a champion that is currently in the meta, don't pick it first round. Like,
right.
Pick it later, flex it if you need to, but you just put a Renekton that has to go in up against a Sylas that wants to go in. Like, you're just feeding into the Sylas. The bot lane, I think, could have gone towards the T1 sided way if the other lanes have any opportunity of winning.
Sure.
The Gnar loses in the top lane because Jungle Morgana sucks early. Jungle Morgana cannot do enough early on in the game, and so you're basically just letting a Sejuani and Aatrox run rampant in the top lane, put the Zeus on the Gnar behind, and then just kind of do what they want for the rest of the game, because the Morgana was never able to get to the point of significance because mid lane loses, top lane loses, and then bot lane ended up losing because you don't have enough jungle pressure. So really poor draft from T1 in game 2. And then again in game 3, the Mordekaiser, they tried on the broadcast to like justify it. They're like, oh yeah, well, the Mordekaiser can ult the Yumi and then, or ult the Zeri, and then it's just a 1v1, and the Yumi or whichever one gets blown up by the rest of the team. Did not happen, because Mordekaiser is not good enough to stand alone in the top lane in most matchups currently. You have to pick that specifically. And yeah, it didn't get ahead. You lose out to the Renekton, and then it didn't really matter that you had a good draft for the rest of the team because your top lane lost so hard and was focused out so heavily by Gen G that they nullified your potential to win any team fight utilizing that ult. They're just like, oh, the Mordekaiser, if we put it behind far enough, it'll be super weak and can't do anything in team fights. So let's just do that. And they did and won, with Faker going pretty even in mid lane, Owner doing decently on the Vi, and Guma and Kyria going even in the bot lane.
Mm-hmm.
You just lose hard top lane and lose the game because you're in a 4v5. So it was tough looks from T1.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It felt like they were like scared in some way of Gen G, so they were like, "Oh, let's try and be like a little cheeky here." Yeah, and it just ended up not working out. But also, like, it just shows the complete dominance of Gen G right now.
It does,
They it barely even fucking phased them, man.
Oh yeah, and so I do have to give props to them because I know I just kind of talked down on T1's drafting and whatnot. Gen G played superbly. Peanut was an absolute nightmare this series on everything he played. The man dies one time, goes combined 3-1 and 3-1 and 29. A lovely 32 KDA for for the 3-game series against probably the second or third best team in the world. Like,
Roller died twice the whole series. Hens died twice. Like they just really weren't touched like the whole time.
Well,
it was crazy.
And
Roller
they're
goes 16-1 in the first game. Like that's disgusting.
And the other thing, the ability to play the Nyla, like we haven't seen too many teams going for it because I think they are unsure of like how to play it potentially to the point that they don't want to risk it in terms of what they're going to do. But to go out and play it, and not only play it, but just kind of crush it with that champion as well in the matchup. I mean, 4-0-2 with a 0-0-11 Singe support, it looked so strong. And so, and I'm hoping I'm not misspeaking by saying that with if it's auto banned in other regions, but I just have not seen it yet, and based on how that was played by Gen G, would not be shocked to see that come out throughout Worlds, through the play-ins, group stages, and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how many other teams pick that up because that is like a big old red flag for that matchup where it's like, oh, okay, so there is a champion that deals with it really well. Pretty crazy, but yeah, just a dominant performance from Gen G. I don't think we stick that much longer on it, honestly.
No.
It was just, unfortunately, it was not the heavyweight matchup. It was just Gen G showing us how to play League of Legends right now.
Yeah, and so with that said, Gen G and T1 both have qualified for Worlds. So they have the 2 first spots for the LCK. There is 1 third spot that goes directly into the the round robin stage of Worlds, and then a 4th seed that will go into the play-ins. So still 2 more seeds to be decided coming from the matchups between Damwon Gaming Kia and Live Sandbox, as well as KT Rolster and DRX. So those 2 will go into the matchup for 3rd and 4th place going into Worlds, and then fight it out to go straight to the group stage or to the play-in stage if they lose. So still some excitement coming up in the LCK, but moving along to the LPL, talking about China, we have 2 different semi-finals matchups that we watched. So you watched the first of the matchups, Top Esports versus JD Gaming. I did not watch that matchup, so give me just give me the deets, give me the overview. How did that look in that 5 game series?
So, Top Esports took the first 2 games actually in a pretty convincing fashion. Their team comps are really aggressive, had great starts in the early game, um, where they just have just a lot of playmaking potential on TN and using him to move around the map, engage with Knight and Wayward in a way that sets them up. Jackie Love and Mark were very, very, very confident in the 2v2 against Hope and Missing. So the first 2 games, quite exciting. Looking for the Zeri angle for sure. In the first game, the Yumi was banned, so they didn't look at it. But in the second game, Top Esports picks up the Zeri. Jackie Love goes fucking insane. There's a moment where JD Gaming is pushing into Top Esports base. Like, it looks really dire for Top Esports. Looks like the series is about to go 1-1. The Zeri goes off with a really nice catch with a charm from Knight, sets up the whole thing. Zeri goes crazy, gets a triple kill, and they just run it all the way back, end the game, go up 2-0. So Top Esports is on an absolute roll right now. So going into game 3, JD Gaming swaps up the priority completely. They look for a Callista priority for the bottom lane and a Rise for the mid lane for Yagao, and that just like broke open the whole series. Once the priority on the Rise went through for JD Gaming, just all of a sudden it felt like the team was unlocked. They had just so much map pressure, and whatever aggression that Top Esports was bringing, they were actually able to answer. So I think in games 3 and 4, the Rise pick was huge. The playmaking from the alt was, I would say, key in bringing the series back in their favor. So we go 4 games, 2 up for Top Esports, 2 up for JD Gaming, and then going into Game 5, JD Gaming pivots again with the pick and ban, and they say, all right, cool, we're going to play Sivir and Mumu this time. They demolish the 2v2, just like right at level 2 or 3, get a nice advantage there, and just carry it through. The game is actually like quite long in some scenarios, but right towards the end of the game, Kanavi back-to-back outsmites TN for a Baron and then a third Drake, just gives them the fight. Totally crazy. Like, Kanavi was insane this series. Smite Finger just on point. Stealing the Baron from Top Esports just took a lot of the wind out of the sails. And then advantage goes to JD Gaming. They go up 3 games in the series. It was super fucking exciting. I love the pick and ban where JD Gaming had a lot in the tank ready for just a slugfest of a series where their strategies for game 1 and 2 didn't really work out, but they had a strong strategy to pivot to afterwards. And, like, honestly, Jackie Love and Hope, it really kind of became a series about those 2 AD carries. They were popping off. Jackie Love was insane. It was just some quintessential LPL aggression. It was fun.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it now because that sounds like much more of a banger of a series than I watched between Top Esports and EDG in the lower bracket finals. On that end, and I mean, it makes sense kind of what you're talking about with the JDG and Top Esports matchup. Kind of how Top Esports ends up playing in their matchup with EDG. They definitely were trying to go for the heavy playmaker and aggressive kind of picks and everything to look to snowball the games pretty heavily early. In game one, they go with the Yone, Wukong, and Akali, and just throughout that matchup, the Akali Wukong were able to just go in, get kills, get quick advantages, and just dominate the game. Mako and Viper had a solid game in the bot lane, but they were just not able to get ahead because of all this aggression. Wayward was using the Yone ults just as gap closers in a lot of senses. He missed a ton of the Yone ults just to get close, put out a bunch of damage, and snap back. So they utilized that strong damage, pick potential, and everything, and were fighting in really good areas around the map as well. They really picked their fights pretty decisively to allow Tian to get in with the Wukong ultimates and to kind of have that immediate follow-up damage from the Akali, from the Yone, and then of course the Zeri as well. In game two, Wayward on the Jax was just a perfect kind of distraction. It was a very back and forth game. Wayward was able to get some good advantages in lane, and across the board they held strong, but Viper really throughout the series was just doing everything he could to try and hang into it. Wasn't able to do enough on the Zeri, just because Wayward was able to really pull a lot of, like we were saying with one of the earlier games, the Jax should be used as a split pusher. I think we were talking about, it was at TL 100 Thieves or
the EG game with Impact, where you see the difference for Wayward's build here with the Death Stance and the Maul Mount Mortius. He teched into a BF sword too by the time of the end of the game, and so he was really looking for the 1v1s.
And he's split pushing, pulling the kind of pressure around the map very well, allowing, kind of forcing people to come to him to challenge him, and allowing the rest of top esports to win the grouped up fights and everything. Tian using the Poppy W super well to stop Scout from escaping or moving around team fights. And then
great pick against the Ahri.
Really solid. And then in game three, again, just kind of having a very engaged heavy comp between the Wukong and the Gnar. They looked really strong from the get-go. Again, still a pretty competitive match, but they were able to get the Zeri far enough ahead in the bot lane of Viper and Mako to kind of shut anything down and give them the 5v5 potential later in the game. Knight was using his ultimates very well throughout the match to kind of isolate players, and Shurima shuffle people out of the way to allow them to get kills early on in fights, and then just kind of snowball from there, even with the Aatrox and the top side kind of doing very well. Top Esports was able to kind of win the decisive later game fight and then just close out the game with a 3-0 to put them back up into a rematch versus JDG. Like we were talking about with these loser brackets and lower brackets, we get these exciting matchups. So a 5-game JDG Top Esports series, we get the rematch 1 week later in the finals.
Yeah, which I think is it's interesting because both of them have qualified for Worlds at this point, I believe. So this will just be for the title of Summer Champion here, and hopefully Top Esports can take it back from JDG in another very exciting 5-game series, because that was crazy. But yeah, that sounds like just a dominant performance from Top Esports. It must feel pretty tough for Viper in game 2 to go 9-1-3 and still lose that game. I guess that just shows the level of the level that Top Esports is playing at.
Yeah, it was otherwise a very clean game, but the Zeri just wasn't able to snowball enough. They were able to kind of build enough of a lead in other areas that wasn't the deciding factor. And so then we'll have a 4-team series in the LPL as well for the last 2 spots. The third spot into the group stage, and then the spot into the play-ins will be decided between the matchups of RNG and EDG, and then V5 versus LNG. Winners of those 2 will be going to Worlds. Winners of those winners will be the group stage. The other will go to the play-in.
Nice.
So, lots of excitement. A bunch more LPL matchups. Any other things that you wanted to touch on before we move along? I know you have some Valorant you wanted to hit on before we wrap things up.
Just like a really minor note here, just basically wanted to mention Champions is starting up here. This is the basically Worlds event, the second year in a row for Valorant. So very excited about that. Bunch of new teams, a bunch of familiar faces. Today we had Leviathan versus Team Liquid in the second matchup, and the first matchup was Paper X versus EDG. EDG newcomers to the Valorant stage. However, Paper X were the previous champions from Copenhagen, which was the Masters, which filters up into champions. So Paper X is the previous, defending champs, and they took down EDG in two games, 2-1. EDG got one back, and it was the first time that we've seen the new board. It's called Pearl professionally. So it was an interesting matchup from the defending champs and the new guys on the block, both on a map that nobody has debuted professionally. So there's no data out, so they were both bringing in fresh strategies, and it was a very exciting matchup. There was some really exciting Raze and Viper plays in that series, so just excited for more Valorant. I think professional Valorant has some of the most exciting casting and some of the most there's something about the way they broadcast it that is very exciting, and their team of talent that does the cast and the analysis quite strong. So I'm just enjoying what they're doing right now. So I'm just looking forward to Champions.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the excitement people have for the game in general. I think the game is very well liked, and it's a lot of fun to play. Very difficult for a boomer like me when it comes to gaming to figure out. But similarly to CSGO and its popularity, it is a difficult game. But the pop-off and excitement potential that's added in by the different agents' abilities and all of the different skills that come into it, or knowledge or whatnot, as opposed to CSGO where it's just standard guns, standard guys. You have certain hop-ups you can do, you have certain ones you can't do, where in Valorant you have a jet that can hop anywhere and everywhere you would want, or a Raze that's able to just throw and chuck bombs out and everything just whenever. You have a lot more potential for these exciting, oh my god, Faker, what was that kind of moments in Valorant, as opposed to just oh, well, that guy flicked on this other guy's head in CSGO, and that's crazy. But when you add, oh, he jumped through the air and then flicked on this guy's head across the map, it just adds that extra element. So I think that has me excited to see some of the top play of Valorant again as well. So I'll have to be checking that out. Looking forward to the Valorant Masters or
Champions
matches that are coming up. So
Yeah, it's I think it's just a sweet little format that they have going on. So obviously just more end of the year end game tournaments to pay attention to. But yeah, just sweet day one. Looking forward to it. But Aaron, let's get these people out of here. Tell me about your flavor of the week.
Sounds good. My flavor of the week. So for my music, it's a shout out to an artist. His name is Petey. I originally came across him on TikTok. He makes these very dry humor videos where he is playing a bunch of characters and kind of taking colloquialisms that he's saying as other characters very literally and kind of running with it in these skits. But he also makes music. He's got some really solid bangers. They're a very unique style. He has some melodic and different changes of pitch parts, but he uses a lot of kind of background or vocal yelling, not like screamo really loud in your ears, but more like Midwest pop punk yelling in some of his music. So a couple
Do a
that
sample for us right
I
now.
can't do it, won't
Just
do
give
it.
us a little bit of what that's gonna sound like.
Won't do it justice, so I will just say listen, if you want to hear it, listen to We Go on Walks after the intro music. He goes right into that yelling vocals and all. It's pretty cool. It's not screamo. I think people will enjoy it. So he has two that I really enjoy are We Go on Walks and Don't Tell the Boys. Check him out. Petey, Petey. Shout out to him. For my food, this past week, Colleen and I, she was down in her old neighborhood and picked up halal for us while she was down saying hi to a friend. I hadn't had halal in a little bit, so I really enjoyed that food. It's kind of like a nice thing to go back to when it was a night we didn't feel like cooking. It's cheap street food straight from the food truck. So loved it. And then for my visual medium, I've talked about it before, but Last Man on Earth, really good show. We were binging a bit, and in the third season, it kind of hits home how accurate they were. The show I think I had talked about before was it has a pandemic background that basically kills off most of the people on Earth. In the beginning of the third season, they are talking or kind of doing a flashback to pre-pandemic or when it was first coming out. And it was funny to see, because this came out in 2018, 2019, that season, how accurate they were. They're like, oh, there's this pandemic coming out. They're talking about the government sending out these guidelines for what to do and everything. The woman that they're showing this background of is driving around, and her limo driver starts coughing, and so she puts up the little window between them. She's looking out the window and seeing everyone wearing masks. This lady's walking her dog and has a mask on her dog, this whole thing. And I'm like,
Damn.
holy cow, 2 years before the COVID pandemic happened, and they were pretty spot on. So I just thought that was amusing, but also just a good show. We've been enjoying it. So Last Man on Earth, that is my flavor of the week.
Hell yeah, some halal and living alone. That's what's up.
There we go.
Nice.
All the good things in life.
So my flavor of the week here, my music. I heard it through the grapevine the other day, and I don't think it's the first time I've heard it in however many years, but just something about the time that I did hear it kind of hit me, and it's just like, damn, I've listened to this song forever. The lyrics are exactly the same every time. There's just something about it. It's like, oh, this doesn't change. it doesn't change, but there's something about it where you listen to it with older ears and there's something different there. I think that's beautiful.
Oh yeah.
So the Motown hit, I heard it through the grapevine. On Sunday, Sarah brought home some tacos for me. I knew I was being bad. I was literally already at like, I'm going to be specific here. I was already at like, I think like 1,300, maybe like 1,250 calories. And so I was like, well, this is a bad idea.
Do you track your calories daily?
Every day, yeah.
Damn, good for you. I just can't because I only eat one meal a day pretty much. I'm just like, I hope that this has everything I need.
That's a great way to do it.
I
think I'm doing it wrong.
No, I'm definitely not doing it right. My Vyvanse like screws my appetite, so I know that I'm not in the right. But I'm just like, let me eat this mass amount of calories in one meal, and then maybe a midnight snack, and like, hopefully that covers the food pyramid.
Sure. Damn, that's yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Last one meal a day. Okay. But yeah, so she I was already like close to my limit for the day. I was like, fuck it, bring home the tacos. And like, when you order from a place like that, it's not just the tacos. They give you the rice and beans on the side. They give you the salsa. They give you the bag of chips. They give you the salsa for the chips. It's a whole fucking meal. And guess what I did?
You ate it all, and that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. You should have ate all of it, because sometimes it's all right to just have a cheat day where you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to eat this good food. I'll get back to it tomorrow. You've had the root. It's not like you don't have the routine. You have all the routines in place that you're like, that's a one-off, as opposed to like someone who doesn't have that built up and everything, who maybe they're like, do that, and then the next day they're like, I feel sluggish, I'm gonna like not do what I normally do. You're like, oh no, this is my routine, I'm back to it, like back at it the next day and on to it. It's fine to have a cheat day, and I'm glad you enjoyed it with some fucking tacos. That's awesome.
Well, I wasn't even going to be mad at, like, I wasn't even about to be like, oh, I shouldn't have did it and whatever. I was just going to say I did thoroughly enjoy it. It was just the heartburn later that killed me.
Ooh.
But it was well worth it, I will say. So I was very pleased, but I was way over my limit.
Sounds so crazy. Good.
It was amazing. And then my visual medium, we watched 2 movies the one evening. We got into a big sociological conversation. We were like, yeah, man, and it's this, and you know what, man, like something about it, man, like I just don't believe, like me and Sarah were in the mode like that. So we put on Money Monster first, because I was like, man, I haven't seen this movie in a long time. It's about a like financial show that gets held hostage and like being made to be responsible for the shit advice that they would give out, where people like lost a bunch of money.
Oh,
really compelling story, and I enjoy a lot of the elements of the movie. So we put that on, and we were like, oh man, blah, blah, blah. And then she was like, I never saw the one about the thing, and I was like, oh, The Big Short, and she was like, yeah. So we put
I've never seen that either.
Dude, that's a good one, because like you learn about it while also enjoying a great film.
Nice.
So that was cool. So she came out with a new understanding, and we were like, yeah, man, the system, man, like, man,
fuck the system all the way. Everyone sucks. Everyone's out for themselves. No one wants to help anyone else. Like, everyone's drowning. It's fine.
It was brutal. But so that was a fun little movie night. We were off the rocker. But nice. That is my short and sweet flavor of the week there for you, sir.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, and with that, it does bring us to the end of this week's episode. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our 99th episode. We've got episode 100 coming up next week. We really appreciate you all listening. So thank you so much every week for taking the time to hear us jabber and jaw on about everything that we love. we have a blast doing it. We appreciate you all for just taking the time to listen to any and every part that you do. Of course, find us on Google Podcasts. Check us out on Spotify. Check us out on Twitter and YouTube at Tall and Short of One on Twitter. Hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. But thank you for everything. We have really enjoyed it for this 99 episodes, and for next week, episode 100, and many more, hopefully. We look forward to it every week.
Yeah, well said. I pretty much second everything Aaron just said. Make sure to tell your friends that we drop new episodes every single Thursday. We just thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your patience and everything. Like Aaron said, it's a blast. We love it. But hit us up in the comments. This has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
Later.